So I'm going to use a somewhat large flat brush. This is a 1-inch flat, and I just have a blank canvas. You can wet it if you want. Sometimes I'll dip my brush in a little bit of water and then just practice. So for the first thing we're going to do is just pull up from the bottom, and I like to push and then pull away. So push and then pull away. And then as we get to the top, we're going to just take the corner and scrub. Just imagine you're scrubbing your sink. And then that's going to be the rest of the top. So it's a pretty simple motion. Sometimes it's helpful to just do it first with your hands or with your water and just get the sensation into your hands before you get the paint on. So you have a little bit of practice. Next thing we're going to do is do it with paint. So I don't have too much water. If you do have too much water, it's going to not stick to the canvas very good. So make sure you maybe wipe the excess water off of the towel if you need to. But first thing I'm going to do is use blue at the bottom. So I'm going to take a little bit of my blue, pull up from the bottom, just like we did with the water. This one's going to be kind of bright. I'm going to go a little pastel today with this one. And then I like to pull it not too far in the middle and then maybe a little higher around the edges, because it creates like a little bit of a smiley face. So fun. Now I want to start to get my greens in there. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow and pull that on top of the blue. But I want to leave some of it looking blue. If you've painted with me before, you know I like to emphasize not over blending, because then you lose all your variety in your shades. So you can always go back and add more blue if you need to, but you want to see some different shades. And I'm just dipping it in the yellow. I'm not cleaning my brush or anything. I invite you to be really loose here. It's going to help. So if you're one of those people that wants to like control the whole process, this will be really good for you. Now, once I have that, I want to my paint looks really, really green. So I want to use a little bit of white mixed in and maybe a little more blue. I want like a turquoise color. I don't want it to be too green. So make sure you maybe add a little more blue and then really mix in a lot of white until you get like a bluish turquoise color. You don't really need to clean your brush because you're just using the same colors. You're just adding a little extra blue and a lot of white. And then I'm going to go in and do my scrubbing with the corner. Now, I like to spread it out in the sky. So see how I'm going around? I want a little more blue still. See how it changes shades? But notice I'm spreading it around. So notice how there's little blocks where I didn't color it in at all. Now, what's helpful to do here is to clean your brush. And then we want to dry it all the way. Once you're done rinsing it off, dry it all the way with a rag. So I just use this old microfiber towel. You could use a paper towel or whatever, but if you paint often, I recommend just having like a paint rag or a couple of paint rags. You can use them more often and they get things a little bit drier. Now, once we don't want to let this get too dry before we add more white to the sky. So I just cleaned and dried the brush, and then I'm just going to add more white to it and plug it in where I didn't put paint. So plug it in, plug it in. Now this just helps you get some more variety, and I like to blur out the top of the grass a little bit. Notice how I'm coming in and kind of blurring it out. I just love the way it looks. Now what's going to happen is your paintbrush, if you have a lot of thick paint, is going to pick up all that paint that's on there already. And you might need to rinse it and dry it a couple times to make sure your colors stay light, because I don't want my whole sky to look green. I want it to look more of like a light blue, light turquoise color. So you might have to clean and dry, really squeeze the bristles out. You may have to do that a few times, and that's okay. Have fun with it. And I'm just going to keep adding the white only in between. So this is one way you can really help make your colors have some variety, is by putting one color in and then cleaning your brush and then just adding white in between so that you get some variety. And I love doing this. This is kind of similar to what I do for like a galaxy sky too. But this is more like I'm creating like a a daytime sky with these colors. And it kind of has like a watercolor effect, which is really pretty. Or I just personally like it. So again, this is just all an experiment. You got to see what works for you and what you like and what you think looks nice. So, but I think that looks so pretty. And notice I left some parts looking a little darker, some parts looking lighter. And then if you want to go ahead and add a little bit more darkness at the bottom, you can just go back in with the brush, clean and dry, and add another coat of blue, pulling back up. Notice the difference on this side versus this side. It gets a lot richer when you add that second coat. And I really want that to look a little bit richer. So all I'm doing is adding more blue at the bottom. So sometimes you just need a second coat and you need to be patient and you need to wait. Then it will stick better. And I'm just pulling it up into that green, getting some different shades because it's another coat. It's a second layer. And I'm like digging that. I like the way this looks to start as my base. So I'm gonna put my brush in the water and I want this to dry before I layer more because it's gonna be really difficult to layer on top of a wet canvas at this stage in the game. So a couple things, you can get a cup of tea. I usually have a little cup of tea going, or you can blow dry it if you want to speed up the process. So I'm going to go ahead and blow dry mine just so I can keep moving through. All right, so once your canvas is dry, we want to go ahead and add our base coat for the gnome. So you can see how this is starting to look. We have this darker kind of color at the bottom, and then it gets really light and cloudy. And then we're going to do a base coat. I'm going to grab a round brush. So this is a number 6, I think. So we want something that's not way too big, but you know, big enough so you're not working too hard. And pure white to start. Now, I like to put the beard right in the middle of the canvas. So if I go to the top and bottom, come together at the same speed, right and left come together, this is the middle. So the middle is going to be where the beard comes down from. So this is the top of the beard, and then I'm going to make a circle. So it doesn't have to be a perfect circle. And I'm just going to color it in with white. Okay, that's it. And then the hat is like a triangle. So you just go on top of the circle with a triangle. I'm going to go about halfway up in the sky. And then I want my hat to kind of meander and go across the side. So it looks like it's drooping a little bit or something. And you want it to go thicker to thinner at the tip. Give it like some wobble. Give it some character. And then color it in. Okay. Okay, so that's a good base. I like it. Now I'm going to clean my brush because I'm going to go in and add their little clothes, which today I'm going to do like a light color. I'm going to do like a light purple. So clean your brush. I'm still using the same round brush. I'm going to mix red and blue. Heavy on the red. I like a warm purple right now. And then add a little bit of white to it so that it's a little bit pastel. And I'm going to go under the beard and make a little rectangle. And maybe you want it a little darker. Use less white. You don't have to make it light like that. You can make it darker. but I want a couple shades. So I want some parts of it to look a little darker and some parts to look a little lighter. So I'm going to do a couple shades just all at once. Okay. And then I'm gonna leave it. And what we can do is we can start to put some shading in other parts. So, for example, I want to put a little bit of this dark color right on the underside of the hat. So I'm just going to go like that. And I'm going to imagine that my light is coming from here today because notice how the sky looks a little darker on this side and it's a little lighter on this side. So I'm going to put my highlights on this side and my shadows are going to go on the other side. So they're going to go to the left. So I'm taking this purple, blue and red. So if there's a little white mix in, that's okay. And then I'm going to put it on the left side of the hat. And the underside here so that we have some the shadows. And I can even put it on the left side of this left part of the hat. So you can kind of change where your shadows fall depending on where you choose your light to be coming from. And you can always adjust it or change it later too. So don't even feel like it has to be a certain way. And then I'm going to make a U shape right here, right in the center. I'm going to go in and make a U shape with purple. We're going to fill that in with the nose color. But for now, I'm just going to pull from the hat down. And from that's going to be the nose. And I'm just pulling down into the beard. And I want a little bit of like purple undertones in the beard. It looks terrible right now, but try to embrace it. It'll come together. Then I'm going to clean my brush. I want this kind of to maybe dry just a little bit. And I want to start working on adding to the hat. So let's clean the brush. Then I'm just going to add red. I'm just doing it along the left side at first, right in the middle and along the left side. And then I'm going to add white to the red as I fill in the rest towards the right side. Now I want it to look pink. You can make it look more red if you want, but I'm going to make mine look a little more pink today to give it some Eastery springtime vibes. You can do any color you want. I'm going to add more white as I get over to the right side. So I always, it's fun to do it right out the bat. If you just want your colors to have some more interest, is to just, as you color the shape in, change your shades as you work from one side to the other. It's just kind of a quicker, more spontaneous way to get your highlights and shadows working for you. So you should see it look a little darker here and a little lighter over here. And you can always add more red again and make it a little darker in some spots if you need to. But I suggest just laying it down and then leaving it for a little bit. We can add more shadows, and I usually do. But I have that pink on my brush. Now I want to make peach for the nose. So I'm going to use yellow mixed into the pink, and make sure you add as much white as you want to give it a peach color. And you can do different colors for the nose if you want. And then I'm going to go ahead and put that right under the hat in the middle. Just like that. And you can make some darker shades with less white and put that towards the underside of the nose and right under the hat. So you can always, you want to have a couple shades on the nose too. At least 3 is my rule. So see how it's in the middle, it's more light, and then around the edges, it's a little darker. And you can take that super far and extreme, or you can keep it more simple. And then I'm going to fluff out the beard a little bit. So cleaning the brush all the way and drying it all the way. I'm going to go back to the white. And then I'm going to go in and pull little brush strokes pulling down on top of the shadow that we put in. And I'm just layering, layering, layering. And you're going to still see the purple a little bit, but a lot less. And then you can have the beard kind of come down on top of the little outfit. It can fluff out into the background a little bit more if you want to make it a little fuller. I like making it kind of big and crazy because it's fun. And then you don't want to lose your purple shading all the way. So sometimes you're going to have to go back and forth, but I'm going to do that, leave that just like that for now so that it has a chance to dry. You can also take that white and put just a little dab at the tip of the nose to make it a little bit more of a highlight. And you could take the white and run it along the right side of the hat to give more of an intense highlight to that. So that's always fun to do. I usually do a little bit of that kind of stuff as I layer. And I want to put some flowers down here too. So, but before I do that, I want to put some grass. So I'm going to put that brush aside. And for my grass, I would like to use a smaller brush or a square brush. So I'm just going to use this angle brush, which is really similar to a square brush. It just has a straight edge on it, like a flat edge. And then I'm going to do some grass with that. The grass is just going to be with blue and a little bit of yellow. And then I'm going to use the edge of the brush and pull up like that. And now we're getting some more specific shades of grass. Barely touching. I love doing this. You can pull up on like around the gnome and on the top of the outfit. But it's a really easy brush stroke. I'm just taking the brush, I'm coming up, and I'm just pushing and releasing as I get to the tip. So it's really subtle. Try to relax as you do this. A lot of times people get very tense and, you know, just a little bit weird about it. Try to relax. So you're just doing little soft brush strokes. So soft. And notice I'm going up kind of high. You want to give it some, like they're tucked in there. And then you can do more yellow mixed in and maybe even a little bit of white mixed in to your green to give it a lighter shade. So see how I'm making different shades. And then you can pull that in. And this is going to be easier to go over that little outfit. So now we have a little bit of like more layers to this. And you could take it really far if you're feeling like you like the sensation of doing that. You can make lots of really little brush strokes, make it look really like real grass, or you can keep them more broad and like a little bit more abstract. And you can go back and forth. So maybe I want to do some light and then dark and go back and forth a little bit. I really want to tuck this gnome into the grass. So I like feel like you have to go back and forth with the dark to and light to get that really sealed in. Right. And then once you have the grass in, you can use an even smaller round brush than the one we were using to do the whole shape to come in and do some more details on the gnome. So I might switch into something a little bit smaller now. Let me see. This one's a little bit smaller, a little pointier. And then I can go in and while this dries down here, I can add a little more shadow and highlight to the gnome. The more you do, the more depth it's going to have. So I'm going to go back to just that. I want to go dark purple. So I'm just using blue and red. And then I'm going to go right where I did my shadows the first time. So I'm going to go under the hat, under the nose. But now that that first layer is dry, it's a lot easier for it to stick. Do a little bit here on the hat. And then I'm going to the left side of the hat. And go to the underside of the hat here. And notice I can dust the shadow a little bit in towards the middle, but not too far. Don't go too crazy. You don't want it to be like an outline, so you want to give it a little bit of character as you fill it in. And then if it gets a little too dark like that brush stroke got a little heavy, you can always clean your brush and paint over it. I'll do that later though. And then I can kind of color in a little bit on the outfit if you want. And then you can add a little bit more shading to the beard, pulling down from the hat into the beard. So if you lost a lot of that darkness when you were filling in the beard, this is going to help pull some back because that needs to be there to give the beard a three-dimensional look. So notice I can pull it back into the white again. It's just a back and forth process. So don't be afraid to let it get a little ugly because it's only going to give it more depth. So see how I'm getting kind of crazy with the purple in there? Yeah. I've got like some more shadows and highlights on that. Super awesome. Then I'm cleaning that small round brush. And I want to touch up this shadow a little bit. So you can just go back into those pink colors and paint over your shadows if they get a little too intense. So see how that just like really softened it? So remember that you could always do that to soften. And I usually do that a little bit. And then I want to add some flowers at the bottom. And I want the flowers to kind of match the hat. So I'm going to use pink. red and white. And then I'm just going to do some little dabs. Just make a dot. At the bottom, I can make my dots kind of big, like that. And then as I go higher, I can make them smaller. And then again at the bottom, bigger. And then make sure you do some like on top of the gnome so that it ties that idea in. And this is a great opportunity to kind of cover over anything you don't like too. And then you can add more white to your brush. I'm not even cleaning it, I'm just adding more white. And you can do some little clusters of white dots. I like the way that looks in this kind of scene, little clusters. I'm just poking the tip with little clusters of white dots, and I'm not trying to make it look too perfect. And if you need to clean your brush, you can. So if you have too much red in there and you're trying to get that white and it's not working out, clean your brush and then just keep going. And then you can go and add more to the beard. Once the purple has it's not too wet. It can be a little bit wet. And then I'm using the smaller brush this time to make those beard brush strokes. So it's going to make the hair maybe look a little more interesting. Leave some of that purple showing through for the shadow. Maybe you want to add more highlight to the hat or the nose, or you can just have some little white dots pulling up into the background a little bit. I like that way that looks. You don't have to do any of those things though. You can also add a little bit of a white highlight to the pink flowers towards the top. So sometimes I'll just add a little dash of white to it. Some of them might already accidentally have some different shades. But that's what we call a happy accident. You want that. You want at least 3 shades on everything. So you should have like a medium pink, a dark pink, and a light pink, or white, medium pink, and red. So anything in between. So see, I could add more red up on my brush and I can put that towards the bottom of the flower. Doesn't have to be pure red, but it should just be visibly a little bit darker than the main color. And sometimes you have really small ones and you can just leave that to the imagination or keep it really loose. Or you can get really specific if you want. It's your painting, so you got to do what feels fun for you. I'm going to clean the brush. I want to add like a little center to these flowers, so I'm going to do that with blue and white. Blue and white. I don't know why, I just want to, this is not realistic here. I'm just dabbing that blue and white in the middle of those flowers. You can do different kind of flowers too. You can even add some little blue dots or something. If you want, you can put a little bit of blue in the beard. So see how I can pull some little beard strokes. Like that. And then I can also come in and add like maybe the green again in the grass or something. So maybe I add blue and yellow, and you can make some little fern leaves. So I just like to point at the tip and then just gently press and then go from side to side and make a little V shape. And there you get like a little interesting leaf. I like to do a couple of those in these scenes. It's just fun. You really got to find out what you like to paint, what feels fun to paint, and then that's your best place to practice. And you do have to go out of your comfort zone. So if you just find yourself painting the same thing and you never go out of your comfort zone, you try to push yourself out of your comfort zone every now and again. And I can make a really pastel green. So if I add a lot of white to that green, I can go in and add some little stuff at the bottom that's going to stand out a little bit, little leaves, little dabs of paint. And you got to just play until you feel like, okay, that looks, I'm good. I like it, you know? And only you're going to know when that point comes. And I might just do one more little once over with some white, and then I'm going to call it done. So I'm going to take my white and add a little bit more to the beard. Some of that blue got a little crazy. And you can even add, like, maybe you want some of your flowers to be toned down with their colors. You can always go in with more pink, make more flowers or less. It's really, really fun to kind of play until you feel like that it has enough character and that you like the way what's happened with it. I'm just sort of dabbing smaller little things back here. Blending out some of these highlights a little bit because I feel like it got a little too contrived. And then I'm gonna call it done and let it go.